ये दिल दीवाना दीवाना है, ये दिल दीवाने ने मुझको भी कर डाला दीवाना। मैंने उसके शहर को छोड़ा, उसकी गली में दिल को तोड़ा, फिर भी सीने में धड़कता है ये दिल। मैंने दिल से उसे निकाला, जो ना करना था कर डाला, फिर भी याद उसी को करता है ये दिल। ये दिल दीवाना दीवाना है ये दिल।
God save the world saves man, man saves the heart saves love.
दिल की खता भी है क्या, मुझको गिला भी है क्या, इस दिल लगी के सिवा दिल ने किया भी है क्या, आशिक है ये चोर नहीं।
Shall I start?
करो दिल पे मेरा जोर नहीं।
Hello guys. So today we're going to discuss about read history. So we all know with the term user pratilipi, right? So when user reads a story, we record that, we save that, we store that. So we could use that in multiple ways. We understand user read behavior. We understand based on that we can make multiple recommendations. This data point is very much valid. And if you see why we need to solve this problem, I'll explain. Right. So let's start. Like, what's happening here was we are growing. If you see once in a while Ranjit like posting, we crossed this much, we crossed that much, and now we have like 2 billion stories read on Pratilipi. That's huge. This is not a problem. We are like happy about that, right? So the problem is when you have to, handle this as a tech platform, we have to support the growth. The pace it is growing and the amount of data that we are storing, everything has to be like well handled, and also in turn giving a better experience for the user, right? If you see the scale in 2014, right, there was like total reads probably started from September. It's like 40,500 types, and it has grown. Now it's like 983 plus millions in this year. Probably like this is the old data. Probably now it has crossed like 1 billion. That's what probably Ranjit has tweeted yesterday, right? As I mentioned, like growth isn't the problem. Supporting the growth is the problem that as a tech platform, we like tech engineering team, we had to solve. And like in 15 months, like if you see just user Pratilipi alone, per week we used to have 100 million requests, including multiple use cases that we have, like is read, whether user has read the story, and saving the user read activity, read history, continue reading. And now it went like in 15 months, it went to 400 million requests per week, right? And even with that, the storage has grown. Now in MySQL data, this user Pratilipi table alone has 580 GB of data, and it's gonna grow very fast. This is like scale that we are growing, and it keeps growing, right? So currently, if you see, we are using MySQL system. So far, we have used past like till May 2020, we used to use MySQL. So MySQL is very good system. It gives very good performance, and like we barely faced any problems with MySQL. But it's at the over the edge. If we are not taking care of the growth, building a better system, we're gonna start seeing problems. All right. So one of a few key factors. There are a lot of things to be taken care of, but a few key points that we need to handle is the system that has to be like scalable in terms like to support this storage performance, and it has to be reliable. So probably if you remember in 2018 or something, like we used to go down like at afternoon traffic or night traffic, still could manage that. But now the DAU we have, like we cannot afford to go down, and we cannot afford to lose data. And there was a little glitch a few days back, and users started reporting why my read history is not visible, why my like I couldn't see most of the things I read. Like people become experts in using Pathology. Now they know more in platform what they see and why they see, right? And the third point we need to take care of performance. Regardless of how much data we have, how much data we are processing, we need to deliver consistent performance to the user in terms of latencies. User should not wait and see the progress bar for a long time. So let's see what scalable is. As I mentioned, current that data size, that single table size is 570 GB, right? It's fast growing. Why MySQL is a problem? Basically, MySQL is vertically scalable, and MySQL's architecture is a master-slave architecture. Performance shouldn't cause much of a problem, at least at this point of time. But the real problems are, so we need, see, storage is 570 GB, right? 600 GB, for example, and that needs sufficient amount of memory, what we call RAM, to hold the index, to do the better, like to do some like to give better, deliver better performance, and sufficient CPU has to be there. And when you say disk writes and reads, it's called IOPS, disk IOPS. Right? This has to be like sufficient enough to deliver with the same performance. And we keep growing, and the demand for better system keeps coming to us. That's ever growing problem, right? Why it's a problem with MySQL is, as I mentioned, so MySQL, it's a single mission, right? It have like, for example, master, all the writes goes to master. So this has to accommodate all the requests in terms of writes. It has to accommodate all the data. A single machine has to handle that. And there is a replication called, we have it as slaves, where we divert the read traffic to slaves. But now, for example, we have a machine which 32 GB RAM and over provision with 2 terabyte hard disk, and for the 16 core CPU, right? Would that be sufficient next 6 months? Probably not. Then we have to do the maintenance. We have to upscale it, right? We have to increase the machine size. With the technology and the support we have from AWS, we can do with very minimal downtime, but it's ever growing problem. But the other problem with that is, as I mentioned, it's single point of failure. I mean, I'll discuss in the next slide. So the problem that we have with the scaling, Cassandra is very good, like is a good solution here, as a good solution, because we scale here horizontally. Means, for example, we add multiple small database like missions. Now it takes care of distributing the data among those missions. For example, we have node, see, there are 2 data centers, forget about the second data center, there's data center 1. Now we have 4 nodes, right? The data gets distributed, stores in all the 4. Like, for example, quarter of the data gets stored in each node. And we don't have to do anything. It takes care of itself. That distribution, there is a like hashing technique where it, based on the primary key, or the ideally say partition key, it will understand where the data has to store, right? For example, with 1 terabyte means 1024 GB of data, 4 machines are sufficient. We have a threshold, like our average read latency should be this much, average write latency this must be this much, right? If this is satisfying for some period, and slowly the scale, with increased scale, we might need to add more machines. We can add on the fly. We can add node 5, node 6. It makes what do you call we can add that on the fly. There is no downtime, and the system itself takes care of distributing the data again internally. So there is no downtime, and that's something that we really want. How that happens is, for example, let's take this example. There is a date, right? So we have user ID. So every user ID, so every user reads a story, right? A user can read a single story to any number of stories. And based on the user ID, it decides where this data for that user should reside in which node. That way, the data gets distributed. Now, we have, for example, say 10 million users. All the 10 million users data gets stored over here. And when we add a new nodes, for example, 2 nodes, that's like 25% each goes to, for example, pretty bad in math, 17% or something, right? This is one of the solutions that we want. We probably, like, after 2 years, we don't know, we might reach to 2 terabytes of data or 3 terabytes of data, right? And second important factor that we have to support the scale is reliability. MySQL, yes, it is reliable. Cassandra, why there is a difference? So when I said reliable, we cannot afford to go down, because when we go down, we're gonna miss data, right? For example, reads still works. If master goes down, reads still will be there, and user would still see read history. User might see like what percentage he has finished something, but anything that user trying to read, those information probably like till the machine comes back, we might lose the data. There are still backup machines where we can spin it off, we can reconstruct the data, but it's like it's hectic business, right? So Cassandra, what happens when I say like Cassandra, not a single machine, like all the machines in the cluster are equally important, and they share equal responsibility. If one node goes down, there is no damage. The reason was we have a technical replication, right? So when X user reads something, that information gets stored based on the replication factor. If we set up replication factor to 2, every data gets a copy in other node. If you put replication factor 3, gets into 3 nodes. Right? It's up to us how much of replication factor we want. And currently we have a replication factor of 2, like 50%. Each data gets a second copy, which is like equally reliable. And if some data which storing that user information went down, there will be no problem. The other machine will have the data, and reads and writes happens through, right? For example, if you guys have seen in MySQL, most of engineers would have seen. So they have a different connection for write, and they have a different connection for read. So to make sure a single machine doesn't get the load. In terms of Cassandra, what happens? Data, like it takes care, like we just configure in the connection 2 nodes, and it will take care of which acts as a coordinator. Means it accepts the traffic, maybe it has the data or it might not have the data. It takes care of internet to communicate, because of we query by user ID, and user ID hash is consistent, and now it knows which node will have that information. So it goes to the respective node, get the information. Probably if it depends, again, there is a concept called consistency, right? For example, a write happens, it happens in 2 nodes. It might go in a microsecond difference. And for example, 20% to 30% change is there, right? This node might have the 30%, this node might have 20%. In a fraction of a second, if read happens for the same node, then it collects the information from both nodes, and whichever is the latest, that will be written back to the user. So that happens with the timestamp, and that is configurable, right? That's called consistency. Consistency local quorum, and consistency the next level where it communicates among multiple data centers. So currently we have local quorum where it takes the latest information from two owners, which are as the replication factor is 2, there are two owners for the same data, and takes the latest information from one of the node. And the third one is the performance. So as I mentioned, regardless of how much we grow, how many users are coming, how many reads are happening per day, we should react and return in terms of like with a stable performance. And if you see, this is the MySQL average latency of the application and the P99. This is for the Cassandra. There is slight difference, not much, like user could not see a difference between 39 milliseconds to 33 milliseconds. But you know, it all matters when it comes to when there is a high load, how the system behaves. The P99s are a P99, P99.99. These are the places where really users see there's a difference. We constantly hearing the problem that everything works fine, but a few users report that I'm not able to load the app, or the screen is not loading and stuff because of these slow latencies for very less affected users. And it's also important. That's why like P99 is, and anything beyond that is also important for us. There's a we have threshold, at least P99.99 has to be 500 milliseconds below that. We do have like P99.99 is below 500 milliseconds, but P99 is something we have around 180 milliseconds here, the peak, so you see, and here it's like around the same, little more than 50 to 100 millisecond difference in MySQL. So till here, you have any questions? Then I'll go to the architecture part. Anything related to these three factors?
I have a question here. I'm Shantanu.
Yeah.
So basically, it seems like Cassandra is like a magic wand, and we can wave it, and everything will be really good for us. But I think probably there might be certain things which we might be trading off to make this happen. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to understand. Yeah.
Yeah. The trade-off is Cassandra comes with a limitations, few limitations, right? Like MySQL, it doesn't have that relational architecture. It's completely flat database, right? Non-relational database. You can't have join queries running in between, you know. And it is like you cannot create indexes. You can still create indexes, but it doesn't work out well. So ideally, most of you see MySQL, you design the schema and you then you can write any form of queries, and if you have enough indexes, it works out well for you. But in terms of Cassandra, you have to design the schema, the table schema, based on the query you wanted to do. So that's the biggest limitation, right? You can't have that flexibility of just have a very nice structure and the query on like based on different fields and stuff. This is one of the biggest limitations. And second thing is RDS is mostly managed by MySQL, by AWS team, right? Here, Cassandra is not managed. Like we have to manage that.
Okay, and the use cases, are we going to discuss it afterwards, or?
Yeah. There are use cases.
Cool. Sure.
Yeah. So it probably not the right fit if you have, for example, author follow. If you have to run a joint in between them, or if you guys know stats, right? If you have seen stats, we do a lot of joins. We do communicate among multiple databases and using joins also. So if that is the requirement, Cassandra is not the right fit. It's for single use cases. Each table just satisfies a single use case. I'll come there. So next part is the architecture. How we have in our system, how it's been architected. We have 4 nodes of smaller sizes. Each one is of 16 GB RAM and 2 core CPU. Right. So if you see here, you guys, it's visible, right? Shall I increase the size, font size or something?
It's visible.
Okay. So we went with a single data center architecture. Means our entire cluster sits in Mumbai. Right? We could have, if the requirement was there like that, we could have like one in some parts of the nodes, a few nodes in Singapore, a few nodes in Mumbai, assuming that if total Mumbai region goes down, we still have the data available in like, for example, Singapore. But if Mumbai goes down, like everything goes down. Right? So it's not the use. We can't, like, having a system sitting in Singapore doesn't add any value to us. So we have everything in Mumbai itself, but we have split the nodes, 2 nodes sitting in 1A subnet and 2 nodes sitting in 1B subnet. So if that subnet goes away, if complete 1A node, I mean, what do you call it, subnet goes away, all the data is available in 1B. It gets distributed. These 4 nodes have the data equally distributed. Like probably for user X, then information might exist in 1 and 4, or like user Y has his data like in 1B, second node and third node. It's algorithmic, very algorithmic inside how it gets stored. Right? If you see here, 4 nodes available and each holds the data. For example, 51, like there's a percentage of data type. Because we have replication factor 2. This is the structure, like how much percentage it holds. For example, if you have replication factor 3, then this goes to 66, like how much would it be? 66% plus around. All the 4 nodes will have 66% of the data. In that case, even 3, like we can afford to lose complete 2 nodes. Even now we can afford to lose 2 nodes, but the way. So we are safe now. We are not losing any data in terms of writes. We are not losing data in terms of reads, the data that we serve to the users. And if you see 1A, there are 2 nodes in 1A, means the rack is the subnet here, and 2 nodes under 1B, which is subnet 1B. And the data center is AP South, which is Mumbai. So I'm going to next slide. So even now, if any slide goes, sorry, any node goes down for any reason, it would, like by the time it comes back, these nodes will take care of it. Other 3 nodes will take care of the traffic, and the data, anything that ideally this first node has to own, that's get fixed automatically. Because there is a configuration bootstrap true false. Based on that, if false, we had to run a command node tool repair that will take care of the balancing the data. If not, if it was set to true, it will take care of by itself. So that is data flow architecture. Here, how we are getting data to Cassandra and how we are serving the data from Cassandra is clients. When user read a story from the reader, it makes a call to PAG, and from PAG we are pushing the data to Kinesis. There are workers where it reads the data from Kinesis and writes to Cassandra. Parallelly, we have S3 get a copy from Kinesis, and this data in S3 is queryable using Athena. This is the write flow for the writes. And for the reads, client makes a request to service. For example, user with Pratilipi finally gets the request for read, and it talks to Cassandra, gets the data back, and serves it back to client. So there are intermediate services, for example, OSS, stats, which ask user Pratilipi to get the data for the user ID, Pratilipi ID combination. Right. So next part is data modeling. Right. As I mentioned, we have to construct our tables based on the use cases. Here at present, we have 3 use cases. One is read history, one is read, and the other one is the continue reading. So read history is basically when user goes to the read history tab. It's available in mobile apps, right? So we, along with with PM Shaili, we agreed that we would have the latest 75 records available, user read stories. Right? We'll make that available for read history use case. So there is a table called live reads, and every write action goes to here. If it was, like for example, if there is a update, for example, 10% to 30%, it gets updated. There is nothing that you have to do, check if this exists, and right, you have to, I mean, you don't need to do that. You just need to run the plain insert query that will take care of latest record gets available. It updates if exist. If not exist, it will create for this user ID. Here, if you see, user ID is the partition key we had. So all the data for the, let me go here. Yeah. So just I should have made a screen for that, but missed. So user ID is a partition key, and Pratilip is a clustering key. So all the data for the user goes to a single node. So it don't, when there is a read request, it doesn't need to go and check what, like it don't need to go to multiple nodes. It has to go to just single node for the primary write. Then it gets replicated into the secondary copy. Right. This is currently using for the read history, and there is another table called archived reads. This will have, this holds entire data of the user. So this serving the purpose of is read. For example, if on the home page or on the summary pages or the screens, we show the percentage finished by the user. Any Pratilip that user try to open, or any story user try to open, in the summary page or the reader page, we show the percentage finished if done. If not, we'll just be showing, we won't be showing progress. But all the request gets queried here. So I would say, like, each content card that you're seeing on the screen has a communication with the archive reads table, and that reflects the percentage is being read or not. This is one other use case. And continue reading, if user has partly finished any story, we want that to be like shown to the user and continue reading a feature. So those information is also getting served from the archive reads. Because continue reading case is like last 7 days data from unfinished, any unfinished story in last 7 days, and any unfinished story which is being added to library. So so we need at least last 60 days of data from here, because user might, a power readers might read even like 100 stories a day. For example, like in a week they could finish 100 stories, and some might be missing. So we are relying on archive reads for the continue reading use case. This is something we can optimize to even like a system as if we want to see more performance. Yeah, any questions here? No questions?
I have a question here.
Yeah, I'm expecting.
Should I ask right now or should I end of the session? What do you prefer?
It's I mean, cases is done. You can ask.
Oh, okay.
Oh, before that, sorry. So this is a session related to the use case user Pratilip, right? So related to Cassandra purely, like going internals, going in depth about Cassandra, I would definitely give a KSS on that. So if I mean, your questions could be based on that.
Yeah, this time I'm actually asking about user Pratilip basically, because I worked a little bit. I was trying Scala DB, so I was have read about how Cassandra and Scala both works, but almost both the works on the same way, except just the technology beneath them are different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, coming back to the question, what I was going to. So, how are we managing these two tables? I was not able to actually get why are we maintaining live and archive records differently. I was not able to understand that.
Okay. So for the read history, you can just put the user ID and get all the information, like last 75 records, right? Right. And for example, if you want is read use case, for example, let's take, there's a single table where you have entire read history of the user. Now to do the live reads, to get the read history when you need limited content, right? So filtering is costly here. Apart from the primary key, if you try to do a filtering, it's costly. So we wanted to avoid that to give a better performance. That's why, like,
Is there some kind, matlab, I exactly don't remember, is there some kind of sort key which we could have, matlab, I'm exactly something like in Dynamo, which is there like a sort key is there, so
yeah.
you can like sort on 10.
Yes,
Is there something like that exists in Cassandra? I'm not sure, matlab,
there
is
exists.
there something like that?
Yeah, it exists. For example, user ID is the partition key and Pratilipi ID is the clustering key. You can also call it as sort key, right? So why? So this combination completely together, user ID and Pratilipi ID together is the primary key, and this uniqueness is maintained based on user ID and primary ID. So, it ensures there is only one record that exists for that combination. For that reason, like now you can query on just user ID, you can query on user ID and primary Pratilipi ID together. But if you try to query on any other field, it will like throw you an error. And there is a filter called allow filtering, but
Yeah,
it's costly.
that shouldn't be used. That shouldn't be used. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Matlab, Cassandra, whenever you are querying something which you are not specified before, it will just not allow you to query until and unless you say ki, I don't care about my DB.
Yeah. But we're doing it for the use case of continuing reading, but it's shorter. I mean, it's tested and made sure it doesn't have a bad impact. If it was giving a bad impact, I would have created another table for that. As storage is cheaper.
And how are we managing these two tables? Are the entries made by the worker in those two tables?
Yes.
How are we managing these two tables?
Yes. So the workers are writing directly into these two tables, and there are 4 workers ideally, which is trying to do the writes here. And there is one worker which is called a cleanup worker, which takes care of keeping only 75 records in the live reads table.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for the information. I have a Cassandra related question which I can ask in the different session.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Girdhar, I have a question. May I?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Also, apart from the read history, have we also covered any other use case?
Yes, EasyRead ideally like you show the progress bar, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
And
that one and continue reading. Yes. All these are the currently use cases of user Pratilipi. So all 3 is being handled.
Girdhar, one question here. When
Yes.
will be available for bulk downloading?
We are making Athena ready for you guys. There are some limitations that currently we are seeing. We are fixing that. Like, I would say CDC, few people might know CDC. CDC is change data capture, right? Yeah, change data capture. So whenever there is a change, there is a log available of that, and there is entire Kafka system available for us. And like we are waiting for that. There is not yet, like there are few good vendors, DBGM and Cassandra itself, DataStax ideally, the company which is having an enterprise edition of Cassandra. From these two companies, there is no official library yet. They're working on, but it's in the beta mode, so we don't want to use it. This is one thing that we are waiting. And second part was, we can have the entire data from MySQL so far, whatever we have, we can have it replicated in the format now how this Kinesis is writing into S3, and we can make it available. We are working on that. Sooner you will have this information from Athena itself.
Girdhar, I had a question. Why
Yes.
continue reading in archive reads?
So continuing, it's based on a date, right? So you want last 7 days, you want last 60 days. If it has been in the library, and probably you might come with a different use case later. So this is kind of variable. So we're still keeping it in here. That's why I said like continuing is something we can optimize. I'm looking into it. Like currently system is stable. Probably the performance is stable. When I get time, like I would pick up the continuing reading also to even make it. better in terms of performance.
Okay.
Girdhar, what is the infrastructural costs involved with this specific use case compared to what we had in the MySQL solution?
Yes. So MySQL is running on M5 2x large. And there is one read replica for that, which is R5 types, small medium mission. It is coming around 700, near to 700, little more than that, 700 cents per hour. This one we are running on four nodes. Each node cost, it is running on like M5 large missions, which is of $101. So currently we are spending 101 or 132, just not sure. So not dollars, cents, 101 cents or 132 cents. Either way, like it is around 500, near above less or more than like 500 cents per hour. It's cost effective, yeah. So when there's a scale where MySQL has to be doubled, it's like, we have to scale up MySQL, it has to be doubled. Moving from 2x to 4x, the cost is gonna get doubled. Here, we don't need to do that. We just need to add this two more small missions.
Cool.
So currently the cost factor is like, you don't see much of a difference, but going like down the line after 1 or 2 years, you would see a major difference. And like theoretically, the performance would be very consistent, regardless of how many nodes we might have. So you guys want to explore dashboards? We do have dashboards.
One thing, just in case, what was the drop in the P99.99? So, as P99 didn't, it changed. Actually, I guess 50 milliseconds changed. But did P99.99 came down?
P99.99, there were less spikes. Let's see that.
Okay.
You guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Let's take yes.
Let's
June.
do it last 6 months types. Okay.
No, we'll take just before and after types.
Okay.
Is it possible?
P99.9.
Okay, it is just showing our. Probably may not be able to see. Let's try relative last 6 weeks, if it allows. I don't know. Like, let's see here itself. Probably from here you could see P9.99, then extend it. Yeah. So this is more like April, May, and June, right?
I can see it much less disturbance and a little settled.
Yeah, the spikes has been reduced.
Cool, thank you. I was just going to check out this also.
Yeah. P99.99 is like extreme deeper, like that's why I did not pick it up. I just went with P99. There are spikes still, but not as much of like here, like if you see in May, in the month of May. Yeah. So if I would not say there are no issues at all, there's been few issues reported that few users complained that they couldn't see their read history. A few items probably missing from the read history, but equally like user deliberately had removed, probably in confusion or expecting something to happen. And very minimal. I have seen 2-3 cases. Probably if you see there's a drop, I could show you if possible. In initial stage, after we start moving the traffic to Cassandra, there was some glitch. We did not lose any data, but the write performance was not configured well. I mean, wasn't working well as expected. So we quickly fixed it and it picked it up. I'm trying to see if I can show you that.
So we have moved 100% of traffic to this, right?
Yeah. On June 6th or 7th, it's 100% traffic is moved here. Probably this drop, I guess. Around 15th, in between 14th, 16th, and something. Like we have, it's not like the writes were slow. Then we picked it up. Like the moment we fixed it, like it covered whatever has been slow, it picked it up. Yeah.
Girdhar, I have one question, Surabhi here. So, how did you go about it? So, did you do the spike initially and then maybe try deploying it for some buckets? And how did you actually like go through this journey? Because currently it's on 100%, right? So, how, yeah.
So what I have done, so we tested initially with a lot of like taking the backup and putting the complete data into the dummy cluster and calculate how the right performance would be. And Cassandra itself has a tool called stress tool, Cassandra stress tool, right? It comes inbuilt. You can run that, you can test the performance, how many writes. For example, this, if I have a X configuration, I want to handle this with this X configuration, I want to handle this amount of load. Right? I can configure that, I can run the stress testing, and it will give output you the graphs. I'm seeing if I could show. Yeah. So this is how you do the test run. So you have to configure user ID size and facility size, like data sizes and like other things, and then load, for example, how many inserts, how many selects, and how many like different kind of query if you have any, and you can configure the load. So consistency level 1 means it will just read and write to, just if it writes to one node, it says it just concludes it and comes out. It doesn't care about replication to the second node if the replication factor is 2. But if you configure to local quorum, probably I have a quorum, right? So this will ensure that it is been written to number of replications that you have. It ensures that everything is written. I mean, it is written to every node. So this is this is how we ensure that it could handle our load with trying multiple configurations. After that, so how we check consistency in terms of the data in MySQL and Cassandra is, we still do have data written to both databases, MySQL and Cassandra. And for some days we have run a script internally to just randomly pick a user ID and see if data is same in both the machines. So that's how we ensure it has been same, like it's been consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, we ran that probably more than a week.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I was running, probably like max to max 17 is the highest number that I've seen. 17 users. Data has been little inconsistent.
Did we try load testing with it, and what are the values we tried load testing with, if we tried load testing with it?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. We can configure the schema here. Right? You can say fixed length user ID 16.
Load test. I was talking about load test, not.
Yeah. Okay. So here you can see you can configure the load in terms of number of thread number of threads and how much duration. If you run that, the graph would show you. Like when I have tested it, I have tested around like 300 or 1,500 writes or reads per second. That was my anticipation. At least the system should hold up to that load.
Right now, what is the current load we have writes per second for user Pratilipy?
It is 300, around 267 or 300 types near to that per second. reads.
Writes are
Yeah.
also 300.
Writes are around the same. Like writes would be little high, 295. Yeah.
So we tested 5x for that. Cool.
Yeah. So fine. I mean, I don't know why the good missions are built on Java. It's terrible. We have to monitor like handling the system itself. One thing.
I'll share a fun fact related to this. Scala is made on C++ and they
Yes.
made C++ alternative because the Java alternative was not performing. Well, they had a compaction wala thing. So
Exactly.
basically when GC runs in Java, just Cassandra, all the latencies spikes. So
Yes.
that was the issue which a lot of companies are facing. So Scala made that Scala DB instead of Cassandra.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. So we had a question that whether we want to use Scala or Cassandra. The only factor that we went with Cassandra was like the community support.
Yeah, community as like Scala users, as far as I can, when I joined the Slack, there were I guess only 50 users which I could talk to who are just using Scala and crawl.
Yes.
There's so less users. If you get stuck in some issue, then you will have to put a lot of engineering effort to just solve that.
It's true. Yeah. So GC and heap are like pain points. You have to understand these two things well to make sure your configurations are right and working well. So ideally, the base default configuration would do some math, and it takes care of handling this heap and GC. And we can always optimize. We went with default value. We tested with defaults. It worked out well, and we went with the defaults. Currently, out of 16 GB, 4 GB would be assigned to heap. Okay, let's discuss these things when we talk about Cassandra purely. So, any other questions? I guess still able to see my screen. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see that yellow border around. Fine. So, if I could wrap this up, I would like to thank Gauri for the opportunity and giving me right guidance in terms of Kinesis especially, and given full freedom for me to take decisions in terms of Cassandra. Whatever, if I have to choose, probably like what you call MongoDB, I should have proved that it would work well, but the choice has been given in my hands. So that kind of support would like probably really appreciate. And Rohit being my side late nights, if I face any, like I used to spin up machines and I don't have access to delete those machines. Right? I will catch up Rohit. I don't need these machines. Please delete. He has done that for me like multiple times. And Suraj is like Mohit introduced me to Suraj. He is from Clarisites company. He is very good with Cassandra, and in initial days he like shared a lot of knowledge about Cassandra, and he reviewed like when I tried to do setup testing and even after the deployment production, we used to have discussions a lot, and he helped. Like being outsider, he helped a lot. Mohit Siddhant, like midnight guys. These guys are owls. Stay very late night, and when I used to work, and these guys help me in terms of code reviews and stuff. I thank you all guys for the support and like, getting this happen.
साहब क्या speech थी?
What is it? Speech. Yeah. I have that scrolling in front of the camera monitor. I'm just reading it.
His voice is like he's gonna cry.
No. I had to make it a bit sentimental
Yeah.
when I say thanks.
Guys, any questions? Any questions from anyone?
Either you understood it well or you don't understand, so probably you might not have questions. Which one is true? You understood or you don't understand anything?
You're asking me?
No, everyone.
Okay.
Understood.
Right, so yeah, Sunny, we discussed Cassandra. Yeah. Cool. Can I wrap it up? Say bye.
No. How can we say bye? Here we
What?
go.
You have said
So,
ये जरूर है, तेरी नजर का कसूर है। फासला तो क्यों दूर है, ये इश्क जो फितूर है, दिल तेरे छूए है। तो होश ना खबर है, ये कैसा असर है, होश ना खबर है, ये कैसा असर है, तुमसे मिलके बढ़ा दिल भर, तुमसे मिलके बढ़ा दिल भर।
Hello?